Hi everyone. So thanks for that introduction. So hopefully you haven't come here to see Paul Wheatley. If you want to see Paul Wheatley, he's in another room talking about DNA storage. So you've just got me today. So I am going to start with a very quick introduction to DPC RAM. So RAM is our rapid assessment model, and it's a maturity model for digital preservation. We developed it as part of a collaborative project with the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority in the UK in 2019. And it was based on a model created by Adrian Brown of the UK Parliamentary Archives. I should say the award-winning Adrian Brown, because he won an award last night, bless him. So we developed DPC RAM with feedback from the whole community and Adrian, of course. And we actually launched it at iPres 2019 in Amsterdam as a lightning talk. I don't know if anyone was there. Hand up if you were there. Paul, good. Leontine, yes. So some of you will remember the actual public launch of RAM into the wild exactly 3 years ago. And because it was 3 years ago, I thought now would be a good opportunity to just come up and talk about some of the things we've learnt after 3 years at working with DPC RAM and the community. But before I go into that, I don't know if everyone knows DPC RAM, knows what it looks like, so I'm just going to give a very quick introduction. So I described this in detail in a workshop yesterday, so I'm not going to go into that much detail. But just to say that RAM has 11 sections covering different aspects of digital preservation. So we have organisational capabilities there. So these are things your organisation needs to have in place in order to be set up and ready to do digital preservation. And then on this side we have the service capabilities of RAM. And these are much more the hands-on things that you need to be doing with digital content in order to preserve and provide access to it. And when you use DPC RAM, you simply work through each of those 11 sections, and using the scale up there from 0 to 4, you just mark yourself. You say, oh, currently we're at this level, and we want to be at this level. And you do that for all the 11 sections. Very straightforward. So a little bit about how we use DPC RAM with our members. So although DPC RAM is available for everyone, we have specific support available for members. So we give support, advice and guidance in completing a RAM assessment. We also encourage members to share their RAM assessment with us annually. And we do that, it's definitely not a certification standard, so we do this just as an annual check-in on progress, really. There's no judgment, only encouragement when we do this. And what we do is we gather all that information together into a report that we share back with members, all anonymous, of course, but members can use that to benchmark against. And there's some nice quotes here from members that they sent back when they shared their RAM assessment with me this year. So you can see people are thinking that it's a useful exercise. They quite enjoyed doing the assessment. Again, they quite enjoyed checking in on their progress and found it a helpful exercise. So that's good. So DPC RAM is also fairly well embedded in the work of the DPC 3 years on. So as well as that benchmarking information being useful for members, it's also useful for us in planning our programme of work for the year ahead. So we can get a sense of where the gaps are, where people are perhaps struggling or finding areas more challenging, and we can start to put things into our programme that are designed to address that gap. But we've also used RAM as a framework for other DPC resources. So, for example, if you were in our workshop yesterday morning with my colleagues Amy and Sharon, you will know that RAM and another tool of ours called CAT have been designed to work quite well together, and that's quite a deliberate exercise. So, what have we learned after working with RAM with our members for 3 years? So here are some really high-level observations. So firstly, DPC members typically score higher for the organisational capabilities of RAM and slightly lower for the service capabilities. That's just a general trend that we're seeing. So the top scoring section of RAM for our members is community, and this is coming out really consistently, head and shoulders above the rest. I'm not surprised by that at all. There's a little bit more variation in the lower scoring sections of RAM in our community. There's a bit of a jostle for bottom place from content preservation and acquisition, transfer and ingest. The policy and strategy also got in there quite near the bottom this year as well, not quite at the bottom. And we have seen progress and improvement over the last 3 years in RAM, but most notably, most improvement has been seen in a section that we call continuous improvement. And again, this isn't a huge surprise. So in order to progress in that continuous improvement section of RAM, one of the things you need to do is assess yourself on a regular basis and act on the results of that assessment. So actually the members that are engaging with this are clearly doing that and therefore improving. So those are just a few sort of little headlines from the statistics, which hopefully are interesting to you. But I have 7 more general observations to make just based on our work with RAM over the last 3 years. So firstly, not everyone needs to aim for the top with RAM. And it's really nice to see people giving proper thought to their target levels, not just assuming that the top of the mountain is the place that they absolutely need to be. So I very much like RAM as being a kind of a self-led journey. So you choose where you want to go. You choose your own adventure, really, with RAM. You decide where you're heading. We don't tell you where you're heading. So you can aim as high as you like, but obviously try and aim where it might be appropriate for your organisation. It was really nice to see the folks in yesterday's workshop really embracing that, and you're not necessarily aiming for the top, but aiming across the board at different levels. So another observation around target levels would be that targets can and do change, and this is something we've been observing as we've been working with members with RAM. So we often see members adjusting their targets when doing a repeat RAM assessment, and this is a healthy sign too. So either they're revising their goals upwards, perhaps because they've reached their goal and they think, oh, we need a new goal now, we need to stretch ourselves, or downwards if they've decided, actually, that isn't really realistic for us, let's just aim for where we think we can achieve. So depending on circumstances. So when you do a repeat assessment with RAM, you should not only look at your kind of current levels, but also look at your target levels and just check in that they make sense to you and that you're aiming for the right place. So observation 3, we've seen it can be a struggle to maintain a particular level of RAM, and it's all too easy to slip. And as I say, there's no judgment on members who are slipping backwards, of course. Like, we offer support. That's what we do. We don't kind of start wagging fingers and saying, why have you slipped down? And we should also give credit to those that just manage to stay where they are, because actually, those who simply manage to maintain a particular level of RAM deserve some praise as well. So it can be actually really hard work standing still on a windy hilltop and not slipping downwards, and particularly in the middle of a global pandemic. So this 3 years of data collection with RAM has largely been in a global pandemic when priorities for every organisation have changed. So yes, there can be challenging terrain with DPC RAM, we've found. So I don't think this observation is going to knock anyone's socks off. Implementing digital preservation takes a long time. So we've only been collecting data for 3 years, but I think it's fair to say we don't see members leaping up the hill 2 steps at a time. Definitely not. Quite the opposite. It's a very slow and steady ascent. So be prepared for a slow journey, is all I want to say, really. We don't know how long it will take because, as I say, we've only been collecting data for 3 years. I'd love to look at these stats again in 10 years' time and to be able to give some more concrete ideas of this is how long it takes to implement digital preservation, because I think that would be really helpful. So watch this space, maybe a future iPres. So we've also learned that how you carry out your RAM assessment makes a huge difference. So sometimes RAM is done by our members as a solo exercise, and that's absolutely fine. I'm very happy for people to do it that way. But we've also seen some great examples of people doing it collaboratively as a team. And this is even better. So getting colleagues around a table to actually talk and debate about which levels of RAM you're at. It's a great way of getting colleagues talking about digital preservation, making sure you're all on the same page, perhaps involving colleagues that aren't normally involved in this. It's a really good idea, and we've sat in on some of those conversations, and it's a great thing. It also irons out some of the subjectivity of self-assessment. So if one person is doing a self-assessment, there's always subjectivity. If there's a group, you kind of iron it out and hopefully get to what's roughly the right answer. So on a similar note around communication, we've seen that RAM makes a great communication and advocacy tool, as illustrated here. So I'd like to say this was an actual reconstruction of an actual meeting, but that would be a lie. However, RAM can be a really useful tool to help explain digital preservation and in your progress towards your goals to colleagues. There's some visualizations within the model that should directly help you do that, and I would encourage you to do that, absolutely, if you do carry out an assessment. And my last observation is that we should recognise there is more than one way to do digital preservation. So there's no one right answer, I think we all know that. And people tackle it from different angles with different approaches, just like climbing a mountain. You might tackle it with different equipment and from a slightly different angle. So it's really challenging for us to design a model that allows for that kind of flexibility of different approaches, but this is what we've tried to do, and we hope that it does support different ways of doing digital preservation and all those different routes to the summit. But also we're very happy to take feedback if we haven't quite got that right. So this is my last slide. So that's something of what we've learned over the last 3 years since we launched RAM at iPres 2019. In terms of what's next, I think really just more of the same. So more statistics. Obviously, we'll carry on collecting data from our members if they choose to share it with us every year, and carry on, producing reports and coming up with conclusions. More support for members, so we'll carry on offering that as just standard. So if someone joins the DPC, one of the first things I do is email them and say, hey, there's this thing called RAM, do you want some help with it? Should we have a chat? And that continues throughout the membership. There's always opportunities to talk about it. More case studies. I think it's really helpful for people to see how others have used RAM. If anyone wants to share a case study about how you've used RAM, do let us know. We're very happy for you to blog on our platform, on our website. More translations. So RAM is currently translated into 7 languages. Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, French, Japanese, Turkish, and English. If it's not in your language, it's simply because we haven't had anyone volunteer to translate it into your language yet. So do get in touch if you want to do that. And more revisions. So RAM is now on version 2. I suspect there'll be a version 3 sometime in the future, and we'll incorporate any feedback that we have received from the community into that future revision. So, whether you decide that you're going for gold with RAM or simply sticking with good enough, we hope you find it a useful tool to help you climb that digital preservation mountain. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jenny. Any questions?
Thank you, Jenny. I must say I do like doing the RAM. You mentioned case studies there, and you said more case studies. What are the existing case studies you have? Are they about doing RAM, or are they about using RAM results as an advocacy tool? Because I see the latter as being something that people possibly struggle with more than doing RAM, because it's so easy.
Yeah, I think, we'd accept any case studies, it's all good. The ones we've got at the moment are linked from the RAM page, and there's various members have blogged for us, so University of the Arts London has done that, I believe, and LSE have blogged a couple of times, and generally it's about doing RAM, and they've often shared their results and they've said, oh, well, and then we tried it again next year and we shared it with colleagues and now we're trying it again and we've got different results and things have moved forwards. But I think any stories like that are helpful. But also we have, for members only actually, we have something that we call a RAM Jam, which is an event and another excuse to just draw RAM cartoons. And And it's an event where we get members specifically to come in and share how they moved from, say, level 2 to level 3. And just to kind of have an open discussion about, well, we did this and we tried this and this worked. And I think that's incredibly useful as well. And I just want to kind of bring all that good information together into one place, which is one thing I'm trying to do at the moment, to create a kind of a web resource to sit alongside RAM to include all the hints and tips and case studies that we have.
Sorry, have you got one from online there, Holly? Sorry, I didn't introduce Holly, my co-chair.
I have a question for you from our online audience. Thank you for your presentation. Threats for current storage are understood. Could you discuss the threats for DNA storage and possible mitigation measures?
Who wrote that?
Wrong session.
I think that question is probably for Paul Wheatley. Thank you.
Never mind.
Anyone else? Oh, yeah. We'll have to make this the last one, I think.
I was in the environmental sustainability type talks before lunch. Do you think with the efforts that we're being asked, and some of us are actively looking at making in being more, reducing our carbon emissions, doing things less, and what's minimal, what's needed, do you see people aiming to be in some of those lower levels? Because to reach the higher levels would require those extra efforts that might not go along with that environmental impact?
That's a good question. Yeah, so when we released revision 2 of RAM, we specifically wanted to build in some learnings we'd had from talking with colleagues who'd written an article in American Archivist around environmental sustainability, so Tessa Walsh and Laura Alagna and others. There was some great work going on there, and we wanted to see if we could bring that somehow into a maturity model. And we tried that when we released version 2. And we've added a couple of things in there which touch on environmental sustainability. I don't think they need to lower the level that you should aim for with RAM, but they allow a little bit more flexibility around saying, are you considering environmental sustainability along with your financial implications and resourcing and risk and the value of the content when making a decision about storage? So instead of sort of saying you must store 3 copies, within RAM, we want to say to people, you must think about all of these things, all of these risks, all of these factors that should go into a decision, and come up with the right one for your organisation and your content. And so we hope that the model works around environmental sustainability and that you can still reach the top, even if you're doing less, perhaps, because of the carbon impact of your actions.